And welcome to this morning's Product Tank Belfast. So this morning we're going to be celebrating loads of wonderful local women in product and indeed design, as you can see, with a series of different lightning talks. So it's a really nice mix today of different talks about careers in product as well as insights into product management as well. So we have noticed that there's loads of newcomers today in the audience. So you are all extremely welcome. Make yourselves at home. You'll probably notice that we are live on YouTube. So do feel free to comment away. Let us know where you're listening from, what you had for breakfast. You can ask questions to our speakers, and if we have time at the end, we will address them. So do try not to just leave it to the end because they'll probably get lost that way, But say anything you like in the comments, so long as it is a nice thing to say. So as we all know, it was International Women's Day this week. So I don't know if anyone else was personally traumatized by the marketing. Buy some kitchen knives for the strong woman in your life. Spend £40 on push-up bras and get a free spiking test kit. Are you woman enough to handle 25% off contact lenses? Yes, we are, because your marketing has made us very resilient to anything that life might throw at us. But, it's not all bad news. We've had loads of really important conversations. So this time of year, loads of people do come to me and they talk about sexism they've had to face. And they say, this whole women in tech stuff, it's really discriminatory. What about people in tech? What about men in tech? So this takes me to my next slide. So women in tech can expect to get paid a median of about 20% less than their male counterparts in the UK. So the plan is we're going to set up a wee direct debit every month, and fellas, just drop us ladies 10% of your salary, and we can have that people in tech conference, 20% for the men in tech conference. So that's all sorted. We can move on to women in product. So did you know that actually product has the lowest gender pay gap of any other role in tech? So you might be going, okay, right. So why are we having a women in tech event then, Eilish? Well, the whole thing is like even over the course of my career, you can see like product management has moved into this really essential function that's actually shaping tech products and directly impacting business success. So we actually have a seat at the table now. We have chief product officers, a third of which are women, by the way. And women do have this history of success in product roles. And, we do, like, whenever we play that equal role in advancing product, we're actually adding to diversity in the tech industry at all levels. But at the same time, only a third of product managers are actually women. So we need to think about how are we going to nurture the women that we have in product roles to progress, but at the same time, how do we get more women into product as well? And like, I'm not just saying this because, inequalities for women are unfair, which they are. I agree with that. But there is substantial research to show that diversity is actually brings loads of advantages to an organization. You've got increased profitability and creativity, stronger governance, better problem solving skills. So like this is like a Boston Consulting Group study, for instance, and it's found that companies with more diverse management teams actually have 19% higher revenues due to innovation. So if you're like a tech company or a startup or an industry where innovation is that key to growth, like 19%, it's pretty significant. So, it really brings to light that diversity, it's not just this metric that we're striving for marketing purposes. It's actually this integral part of being a successful revenue generating business. And like it has been really wonderful to see loads of women celebrated all over Northern Ireland in different women in tech conferences this week. But I do think like this year, I just saw things from a slightly different lens. So like, I don't know if anybody has actually seen the gender pay gap bot that has been going about, but it is an absolute laugh, but at the same time does highlight a lot of stuff. So, you have all these companies that are like, we love International Women's Day. We think women are wonderful. And then it just sort of retweets it with like a summary of like, in this organization, women's median pay is 58.2% lower than men. And it was a really good highlight of like, okay, this is great that you think women are wonderful. We're glad that you have them on your team, but what are you actually doing to bridge that gap? So like I recently came off maternity leave and I was looking for a job in product and I was sort of told, No, we don't allow our product people to do 4-day weeks. We can't guarantee that you don't have to travel, even though this is an internal product. You may have 7 years of relevant experience, but you also need a computer science degree for this role. Or even the one that really annoyed me was like, we'll make an exception for you. And it's like, I don't want to be the exception. If it works for me, why is it not going to work for other women that don't have the same connections? And like, this is coming from companies that are speaking at these events about how women in tech are really important and they want to bridge the gap. And they're saying, I'm struggling to hire product managers, but my feel is that struggle is to hire the kind of product managers that they have in mind and could maybe benefit from some flexibility and open-mindedness. Because, in like product management, an acceptable answer is never, because that's the way it's always been done, not acceptable. So we do have a long way to go. So I thought I would take the chance to outline some actual actionable insights that can help anyone hiring in product, any decision makers, any leadership in product to really make a rapid change on behalf of the women already doing the work in product, but also how to get more women into product. So these are the steps outlined by a study conducted by Women in Product on thousands of organizations. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into all of them, but I'm going to highlight some ones that I think are really important. So step one, give support to existing product managers. So the problem here is that women are actually given less formal training than men in product. And the training they do receive, they actually go out and fund that themselves, majority of the time, statistically speaking. So also, women are naturally gifted at the soft skills. So it's really the business analysis, data analysis, design, technical skills that we need to get more training in. So the way forward, give women access to budget for formal product training to gain hard skills and give them equal access to that budget than men get. And as well as that, encourage women to be in product communities outside of their organization for guidance and support as well. Step two, focus on the needs of intersectional women. So it is just a fact, and it is really sad that we don't have any representation today, but women of colour make less money and have a hard time rising to higher level positions throughout their careers, which is very sad. But like, the way around this is to look at regular reviews and adjust pay, recruiting, promotional disparities, and looking at not just gender as a single factor, but also how does that intersect with race, disability, sexuality, religion, so on. So also have a very structured interview process to eliminate that unconscious bias. So I don't know if anyone saw, I shared it recently. There's like an online Harvard study that you can take, and it just tests whether you have any unconscious bias to certain groups. And it's like, you don't know, you might not be aware that you actually have this unconscious bias. So before you go into interviews, you can check that out and you can go, I'm aware of that now, so I'm going to take actions to counteract that. Also, you can actually input your job description into an app to see whether, like, what percentage of sexism does this job description actually have with the language you're using, which again, some people aren't aware of. And like, just number one, just don't ask for rock stars, because like, I'm just not going to apply for your job. Like, I'm sorry, it is cringy. Right. So step three, remove those barriers to promotion. So like, there's often in a lot of companies, you see that for promotion, like what's needed to get to promotion, it's shared, but really informally around an organization. And like, everyone's really poorly served by that. But more so, as you can sort of see here, it's more so the women that are badly served than the men. And we do see men advancing faster at manager and director level. So there's more men than there are women in the pipeline for higher positions. And a lot of that's down to like past requirements for product managers to have computer science degrees. Like, it's left this gender imbalance at senior and executive levels. And another thing that I didn't know is that women are actually half as likely as men to be mentored by a senior product manager. So like, this is another thing to take into account. So the way forward, create and publish requirements and process for promotion and put it somewhere where everyone can see. But not only that, also every year look at the promotion results against what you said the requirements were, like who got promoted, who didn't, and did the people that got promoted actually meet those requirements more so than the people who didn't. Also ask like a product manager, like, it's fab like that you're mentoring men, I think that's great, but also anytime you mentor a man, mentor a woman as well. And also look at like leadership programs that are specifically designed for women, because they can be a little bit different. Step 4, like have a look if your job requirements are actually reflecting the success of the role itself. So like when companies are recruiting product managers, they never really look at, I can't say never, they don't tend to look at prior experience whenever they're looking at product manager candidates. So you look at job postings and they tend to be, 5 or more years of direct product management experience. But this really overlooks potential candidates who actually have skills in prior roles that are directly applicable to product management. And they're really good indicators of success in the role, because actually 64% of women who have transitioned into product have been in the field 3 to 10 years. And some of them are going into entry-level product positions. And it's people who don't have connections that are overlooked for roles, even though they've got really relevant skills. So it's just a case of look and course correct like existing product manager job requirements at all levels, and just check like, are your requirements actually syncing up with what is needed to be successful in that job? Because we know that women are less likely to go for jobs where they don't tick all those boxes, but just make sure every single one of those boxes are necessary if you're going to put that out there. So to sum up, do all of these things, but also why? Because if there's greater women in product, like we're going to see benefits ripple across like the entire industry, not just product. And we're going to benefit from better products, better return on investment. And, like the Women in Product study actually showed that male and female product managers believe that women in the field will deliver all of these great things. So please stop talking about change and just make change happen, by doing some of these things. So as we like to say in our sexist job descriptions, on to the rock stars of the evening, just to say that I will be heading off to Brussels. Sorry, Stephen. So Stephen is going to be taking over as your glamorous host after Emma's talk, but I'll be listening to all these outstanding women in my car. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Emma Mulholland. Emma is actually co-founder of ProductTank Belfast. So you can thank her for being here today. She also co-founded and co-organizes currently Product Camp Belfast and Lean Coffee Belfast, and she has previously led product management at Instill, Shopkeep, Allstate, Marks and Spencers. I mean, I could go on. So it is my pleasure that I introduce Emma with the first of today's talks, The Great Life Redesign, Experimenting to Find Joy, where I believe she's going to give us some very pertinent life advice. So over to you, milady.
Thank you. Thank you, Eilish. That was quite an introduction. Firstly, to say those stats and that information you just walked through was absolutely mind-blowing. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch all of that because I just think it was really interesting and really useful. And yes, caveat, I'm not doing a talk about products after that introduction. And I'm also just setting a timer. This, by the way, is an amazing thing I've discovered recently, the time timer, because it's brilliant if you need visual representation of time to help you focus. Yes, so my talk today is going to be more, like I said, a personal life talk about things that have been happening to me over the last 2 years, and hopefully it will resonate. Hopefully people can take away some stuff that will help them. So let's start by getting things clicking. Okay, cool. So firstly, life is complicated and hard, and sometimes we see all these, social media posts, Instagram posts of people being successful and amazing, and the introduction I just got given, I always have people say, you're so strong and you're brilliant at doing these talks. And the reality is that like we're all human and life isn't easy. And even before there was a global pandemic and a huge economic downturn and the potential of a World War III, life is difficult. I actually tweeted this image, and I'm not sure where I got it originally, so I can't credit the source. About 2 years ago, a childhood friend of mine, I was going to a funeral, she was stabbed, and my brother was going to the funeral of one of his close friends who committed suicide. And it was just a really, really kind of reflective moment. And it kind of just reminded you that that things are hard and life is complicated. And I thought about it again when I was doing this talk, so I kind of just wanted to put it kind of out there. I'd also say sometimes you think that people are successful because, they have these wonderful lives or they come from these very stable backgrounds. Something some people know about me, but maybe don't know, is my background and my childhood and all was fairly, interesting, at times chaotic, because my dad is bipolar and my brother is schizophrenic. So I've kind of had a lifetime of managing mental health issues and kind of as a family jumping from crisis to trauma to crisis. So it's I guess what you see in terms of like how people present isn't always what's going on in the background. So, just I guess take some comfort from that as well. Um, okay, so this image, this came up in my LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and it really resonated with me. And I actually ended up resharing it and commenting on it because basically I had a really, really hard time. I know everyone's had a really unsettling and kind of life-changing sea change over the last 2 years, but I really struggled in the last year. And there was a point kind of, I think 6 months ago was kind of one of my lowest points. And so this kind of resonated with me, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there and say, do you know what, this resonates. I've had a really shockingly awful time. My mental health was bad, my physical health was bad. Every part of my life wobbled about the same time, and it was really disconcerting. I was kind of getting dizzy spells and just kind of collapsing on a regular basis. So it wasn't super awesome. And I've spent the last year kind of trying lots of different things to try and work out like who I am or what I want to do. And that's what I want to talk through is like, if everything's unstable and you're feeling very stuck, how do you start to unstick yourself? Like, how do you start to work out where you want to be or go? So this is kind of saying that it's not all about money and your job title. It's about lots of other things. Okay, so this is I was totally stuck and no idea where I was going or what I wanted. I think it's hard to know how to get somewhere anyway. It's even harder when you don't know where you want to go. And this is a concept that I've kind of come across multiple times over the years. And so you kind of have this thing in your head where, if I can work out these things, maybe this will start to get me to a place where I'm okay. But it's like, if you don't even know what you're good at, or you don't even know what you love doing, like how do you even just start to get there? So I kind of had this image, but I didn't even know where I was now to start to work out how could I do this, because this was obviously going to be the thing that made everything, okay. So what have I started doing? Like, what things were I doing in the last year? I was doing lots of things because I was trying to reach out. I did life coaching with Lucy McKenna, it's the lady in the top there. She now works for Brave Lab, but she ran her own business called Full Aeon at the time. And she was really, really helpful, and she kind of gave me frameworks to work through. I did leadership training, again, to that point about self-funded. I was kind of just paying for lots of things and doing lots of things myself because I was like trying to unstick myself and keeping it quite personal. But this lady, I'm going to get her name wrong, I know, but it's Sarah Wachter Bocher, maybe. She does an amazing training course called Active Voice. It's kind of leadership communication, but it also helps you reframe how you think as well as how you communicate and lead. And that was absolutely fantastic. But what actually started really happening was just talking to lots and lots of different people, because when you're kind of stuck in your head and you don't really know what you're doing or what you're good at or what you want, sometimes other people can start to help you understand that and reframe that. Should really put Rachel's picture up here. Rachel Gawley is also one of our speakers today. And Rachel was really helpful to me because like she could start to help me realize what skills I did have or how they translated into like other roles or other ways I could do things. Like talking through things can be really helpful to help you reframe your current situation. And then mostly I started detangling what I liked and didn't like. And what's more important is if you feel really uncomfortable at stuff, if you really don't like stuff, that can be the starting point of, right, okay, I don't like this, so definitely don't do that. What do I do instead? Or why don't I like that? Like trying to start to be like specifically pick out, is there something intrinsic in that like I don't like, or is it just I don't like that because of other things? And so starting to try and think through, what wasn't working for me. And then just spend time trying to work out like, well, what is important to me? Like, what are my values? Like working out your values, a way to do that is when things don't resonate with you, if you're clashing with people or if you don't feel comfortable in situations, and you're trying to work out why, it can often links into like your intrinsic value system and what's important to you. Where is your energy working? Where do things flow and where they don't? What brings you happiness and joy? And sometimes you don't even know that, because the last 2 years have been so hard and we've been so insular and contained. You actually forget what it is that makes you happy. So trying to work out what makes you happy, and then what are your skills like, and what's is a skill that you don't even recognize as a skill? What are you good at that you don't even realize, because it's just, that's how I do things, and other people can go, no, other people don't do that, or that actually is really helpful. So trying to work through like what makes up you as a person, the time, it's really good. This was helpful. This came from Lucy, actually, as part of the life coaching, which is kind of the wheel of life. I guess how we manage products and how we understand our users. There's kind of that research where you're finding out, okay, well, what is the current situation, or metrics? How do you start to measure things, to understand them, to change them? This is a really helpful way to do that. If you just Google wheel of life, there's lots of versions of this, but essentially trying to understand the different aspects of your life, and give them a score, and kind of understand what's working and not working, so you can start to visualize or work through what you do want, can be really, really helpful as a reflection exercise. And then how, if I started doing this whole, that was the what, like working at where I was, or what I was trying to get unstuck. So then how did I start to get the movement happening? The first thing was I gifted myself time and space. This sounds a little bit bonkers, but I mean, you can't even begin to start to move, if you don't have the time to do some of this reflection and to start to feel out what it is you want. Like the epiphany moment for me was I was applying for a job, and on a paper, this is something that I would have wanted for years and years, and it was an amazing job, and it just wasn't singing for me, and I couldn't work out why. And I just out of the blue said to them, would you let me work part-time? Like I think this could work, but like, would you let me work part-time? And they just immediately, without a second thought, went, yeah, of course. What hours do you want to work, or what days do you want to work? And it just started unlocking everything. I just suddenly was like, wait a sec, okay, if I can do this, I can just get space, because I can't do anything else until I get space and start to be able to think through things and work through things and feel things. Also, the magic number, if for feasibility, if you want to try and work part-time, for me anyway, to be financially viable, was 70% of a full-time role, which is 3 days 1 week, 4 days the next week. And I was like, okay, that actually means I can pay my bills and get food, and I can start to do this and give myself space. So that started unlocking everything. And then it was a case of, that is my 10 minutes, I'm going to go faster. I kind of give myself winter to hibernate, because if you feel like you just need to sleep and you just need to kind of like get your energies back, do what your body needs. Started reflecting, started working out what brings me joy, started doing things that make me uncomfortable, to try new things, to work at what I liked or didn't like. This is examples of this, even in the last few weeks. I was at the Mac this week with my brother. This is my brother, Matt. And I went to Force Labs and started trying to do laser cutting. Essentially, I'm just trying anything to work out, okay, well, did I like that? Did I not like that? Why didn't I like it? Trying to find out what is like really like gets me buzzing, or what I want to what I find joy in. That's the thing. What brings you joy? Marie Kondo your life. And things that help ground me. Because what I also find is, because of this dizziness and stuff, and I probably have ADD. I've never been diagnosed, but that's something that my mum, who's trained to be a counsellor, has kind of said to me, you should look into. And my thoughts are like all over this place. So what I learned is I need to start grounding, and meditation grounds me, recognizing emotion and learning to sit with it, because part of what triggers the scatteredness is actually not processing emotions. So if you learn to kind of just sit, it sounds simple and it's really not. Like mindfulness and sitting with your emotions, being outdoors, any kind of body work that helps ground you and brings you back into your body, which is running or yoga, massages, doesn't have to be exercise. That helps ground you, which helps bring you down, and can help work with this reflection and working out what you want. Remember, it's progress, not perfection. There's no one right way. So don't think you're doing things wrong, because whatever you're doing, it's the right thing to be doing at that point in time. Just be kind to yourself. Brilliant quote. Love this, Samuel Beckett. Ever tried, ever failed? No matter, try again, feel better. And this quote was actually used by Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist nun. She gave this university speech, and the whole theme of it was that quote. And it's a fantastic. This is a really short book. I've actually got it here on my desk. It's really, really interesting and quite nourishing, I guess, to read it. It's quite inspiring. But this is one of the quotes from it, which is, "What if failing weren't okay, but the most direct way to become a more complete, loving, and fulfilled human being." And then these two books are really helpful. When the Body Says No. So this was to do with the dizziness and all the rest of it. I actually, I've realized that I don't process emotions or trauma, I embody them, which then means that my body falls over whenever I kind of get stressed out. And this book there's a whole theory on it. It's really interesting if you want to read into. And then Designing Your Life. This was some of the concepts that Lucy used in my life coaching come from this book. And it's a really interesting book in terms of experimenting and creating prototypes to kind of help you work out what life or what career you want to have and kind of start to work towards it. So I think that was probably a few minutes over 10 minutes. But anyway, thank you very much, Stephen. That's me.
Well, thank you, Emma. Thank you very much. You're definitely one of my sort of favorite product people, and I always really enjoy sort of looking forward to what you have to say. So you didn't disappoint again, so thank you very much. I want to mention as well, just before we move on, we will have a recording of this as well. So if anyone does want to refer back to any of Emma's slides or any of the other slides, we will share that out after the event. So don't worry about that. So we'll be moving on to Emma. So I'll say goodbye to Emma. Thank you very much. As Eilish mentioned, Eilish handed over to myself. She had to run off, but I do appreciate the irony that Eilish handing over to me means that the only thing stopping us from hearing all of these wonderful product women is my ability to multitask. So everyone cross their fingers, and hopefully this goes okay. But you're not here to listen to me. So with that, I will get on to introducing our next speaker. And our next speaker I am delighted to mention is Scarlett Jeffers. So Scarlett is the CPO at Agile Experience, which is, I believe, a deep analytics tech company. Scarlett, you can keep me right on that. Thank you for nodding. I appreciate that. So thank you. Scarlett's specialisms are in new product development and navigating pivots. You've also worked previously in Apple and EY, and you also have been co-founding a very successful scaling company as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of these insights. You can definitely teach me a few things which you have in the past as well. So outside of work, Scarlett is definitely a keen advocate for women in technology. You are encouraging young people within to move into STEM careers, and you also do a lot of pro bono work for Tech for Good projects as well. So with that intro, I am pleased to introduce Scarlett with her talk, Growing Pains for Finding Product Market Fit.
Thank you, Stephen, for the very, very kind introduction. Just one thing I wanted to say before I begin, just a really big thank you to Eilish and to Emma as well, because, you know, these are the kind of women who trailblaze for us and make it easier to come, you know, in the schedule. So, you know, really, really appreciate the honesty. Hopefully you'll get that from me today as well. I think sometimes we do have a tendency, you know, when we are asked to speak, to kind of focus on, you know, the glitter and the polish and presenting this, you know, view of ourselves to the world. And actually today what I wanted to do was share some very real, very honest moments that I've been through on this path to seeking PMF. You know, as Stephen very graciously mentioned, I've been through this a few times now. I've got the whirlwinds, I've got the stories. And really what I wanted to do today was just share a bit of openness around how that can impact someone. Very similar to Emma's story, you know, things like I embody stress very, very physically, and I have to learn to create boundaries in that. And really what I wanted to go through today was different ways that I cope with these growing pains, specifically from the lens, and what I will talk about most today is as you're seeking PMF or product market fit, how do you stay sane, and very specifically as a product leader or as the person who stands in the seat and shoulders the weight of that responsibility. This does also apply and would have applied to me at many other times in my career earlier as I was coming up through the ranks. And at many times, you know, to be honest, I wish somebody had gone through these things too. So Without further ado, I'll get going on the slides and the talk. The reason that there's a photograph of this, of a very unglamorous pod in a long haul flight, I wanted to open with a story and kind of just ask you guys to all imagine this with me. This was a photograph that I took on, I think, maybe about R11 of a 14-hour flight to Las Vegas. This is about 3 years ago now. I was on my way to CES when in-person tech events were still a thing. And I've been sitting with my co-founders. We've been having quite a few cocktails. We'd been running for about 2 years to build a product from scratch. It was called Clario. We'd been going through this whole life cycle of it. I was the product founder, and my role in the company as co-founder, obviously building the dream. We'd been running really at full speed, and the reason this photo is here and the reason it's starting the talk is when we were going to CES, it was the first time we were showing anything of this product. The first time we showed the brand that we created from scratch, the concept, the strategy behind it, all of those things, and we were going big, which was we were launching this on the world stage of CES in the enterprise hall. Our booth was right beside Samsung, who were launching those metahumans that they had. So it was really, really high stakes. And I just remember this is one of the most terrifying moments of my career. We'd finished our cocktails. We'd all been having a laugh about how insane a journey it had been to this moment and how crazy we were to launch cold at CES, of all things to do. And I went back to my pod, and just as I was on my way back to my bed to get a few hours of sleep before we landed in Vegas, one of my co-founders turned to me and said, "Well, I hope you're right." And I just had this moment where I got into my pajamas, took the makeup off, sat down, and I was just staring at this exact view that you see on screen and thinking, God, I hope I'm right too. And it was this real moment of self-doubt. So really what I wanted to talk about, with this is, what is PMF? Why is it hard to get to? And why does it hurt so much, and how to get through those growing pains. So I've got 4 pains that I kind of call out. And the reason that I'm going through them, this way with you is that I mentor a lot of people. And this is one of the most common things I get asked. How do you just survive PMF? So growing pain 1, PMF is not a science. I'm a scientist. I'm a nuclear physicist by training. Love data, love mathematics. As Stephen mentioned, my current product, we're a deep analytics company. I just geek out on algorithms every day and have the best time. PMF is something that if you are very scientifically driven or very, very data driven, striving for this and knowing when you've got it and keeping it, and then being confident that you've still got it as you move through scale, it's an art form rather than a science. You'll see on the right-hand side a couple of things. These are my Post-it notes. I'm obsessed with Post-it notes, as we all are in product. I spend a huge amount of my life mapping out metrics, things that make me feel better. I give myself tons of KPIs in the hope that at least 1 or 2 of them will track well. And that will give me the confidence to go on and build forward and make decisions. One thing, though, that I've really learned as a growing pain of seeking PMF is that everybody in a business, your investors, your shareholders, your stakeholders, people in your teams, other people in the leadership team, who you work with, you have responsibility to in C-suite, or anyone else in your own product organization, they will look to you for KPIs and metrics. And the second those start to track in a negative way, everyone will panic and lose confidence. So my biggest tip on this is really coach people to embrace that discomfort. Coach people to understand that you may start with 10 KPIs seeking PMF. One of them might work well, and that might be still enough to get you through, and cross that chasm, as we like to say within product. It's such an important point. People will get so hung up and so panicked on KPIs, and creating a sense of comfort around the discomfort is so critical and so important. Much easier said than done, but in practice you get there, and you learn to focus on other things like instinct and beta feedback, and you find other ways to validate things for yourself. And just a point that Emma made in her slide, life isn't a straight line. The journey for PMF, people have this gorgeous idea that you will innovate a product or pivot a product. You'll do all your market research, you'll validate it, you'll be very pleased with yourself, you'll be feeling very smug, you'll be like, oh yeah, we've got it right, it's going to be awesome. You test your prototypes, people love it, the feedback's gorgeous. You ask the Sean Ellis metric question, which is, if you couldn't have this, would you be devastated? 90% of people say yes. You think you're home straight. You stand up at a town hall and you tell everyone it's going to be excellent. And then you do a launch and nobody uses it, or people use it and stop using it. And you have these moments of fear and darkness, and you get all tangled up again in the spaghetti. And it's just about having, the understanding and the expectation that that's what that will look like. And on the bottom right, I know that you can't read the detail, but you can see one of my PMF maps. These are phases that we flow through when we seek PMF from an innovation or a pivot. It's very complicated and very tangly. And it's just about saying this thing of acknowledge that you will be very uncomfortable, acknowledge that there'll be moments where you think you've got it and you'll plummet right back down again, and just have the confidence to embrace that and reframe it as an excitement and a journey. One of the most beautiful things about working in product and being a product leader is that you're always on your toes and you're always learning, and it keeps you humble in a way that I think not many other roles do. So just enjoy the pain. PMF is an art, not a science. I'm going to sort of skip over this one because I'm conscious of time and kind of getting us back on track, but balancing collaboration with setting direction, very tricky when you're a product person, especially as you move towards leadership. And again, a lot of especially women, I have to say, that I mentor, coming up through the roles in product, they really struggle with this concept of how do you balance collaborating and having a fully formed perspective yourself, seeking enough input from people who know better, because everyone else will always know better in their domain than you do. Seeking a true understanding of consensus and what is, the least risky way forward, or what is the sensible thing to do. How do you balance that and share those moments of excitement with your team? Create a sense of shared ownership and shared responsibility for the success of the product, while also being able to take the lead when you have to, because there's moments during PMF where you've just got to make a decision, and it may be an unpopular one. And this is a very severe growing pain that I think most product leaders feel. I'm going through a scale right now on a very significant product pivot in my current role. It's a public company. We're listed on the stock exchange, which means there's a huge amount of visibility on every decision I make. It's audited. So, there's a huge amount of pressure to know when to do this, to know when to step in. And I think my best advice here is that you just work towards a blend. You create a culture in your team, in your company, where everyone understands that your job as a product leader or as a product person is not to make the decisions and find the solutions. Your job is to deeply understand the market opportunity and the drivers behind why people want what you're trying to build. And on the other side, it's to understand how you can approach the solution. And other than that, you are a facilitator. When you step in and take the lead is when you've got all these, years or whatever it is of hard-earned wisdom, whether that's directly in product or in other business domains or other areas. There are moments when you have to trust your instincts and create direction for people. And they will push back on it, which leads me on to one of my nearly final points. Haters going to hate, or are they? This is something that I come up against a lot. And when earlier in my career, when this came up for me, I find this personally incredibly difficult to move beyond. You would have this great idea, lots of people would like it in concept, then you would start to speak to a wider group of people, and you would start to get really difficult feedback around why it wouldn't work, or how it couldn't work, or how it was impossible to build the dream, or whatever it was. On the top right-hand side, this was whenever I was co-founding my business. What it actually is a sort of message that I sent to one of my co-founders, who's my commercial counterpart. And as you say, it's these. I think it was. I can't remember the story behind it, but it was these. This like pair of people who had been dug up and found, from this ancient civilization, and they've been buried together. And I just loved it because I was thinking about him on the one side, and then on me just screaming out at at our product team at the time, or other people in the business. And the thing, the gift looms that you see in the middle, this was the code name that we had for the product we were trying to build. It was a massive category disruptor. No one else was up to it. There was just huge amounts of visibility on the fact that we were doing something really different and very deeply risky in a very sort of traditional established market that had its rules and had its category definitions. And there was a huge amount of discomfort in our team that we built. We had about 1,000 people by this point. We were scaling through investment rounds. It's tough when you are the person who has to protect the baby, and suddenly someone's calling your baby ugly, and you're like, what? My baby's not ugly. You're a horrible human being. And really what I learned was, choose every single day, every single time someone challenges it, choose to believe that they're objecting from a good place. They're objecting or criticizing because they feel a responsibility, and you've done your job well at creating a sense of shared responsibility for success. And they're coming to the table and being very brave in challenging you because they feel it's the right thing. And the other side of that is understand the fear. Psychological safety in a team for product specifically is the most important thing that you can have. I've worked in companies in the past where that wasn't created, and it leads people down very bad paths, and you make mistakes, and things become very, very difficult to work around. And this is one of the most important things that I can say. How do you further the cause for women in product, women in management, women in leadership? Psychological safety. Allow people to be afraid and then shoulder that responsibility for them. The difference between the two photos that you see, the top one, as I mentioned, this was way at the beginning of our journey when we were just first trying to inspire people to do something different, to take a risk, to unlearn everything they knew before about their category and just start with something, that could be rule breaking and could be amazing. The photo at the bottom was, I think maybe about 3 years later, it was taken on an internal ski resort that we were on as a team with a few hundred people with us up in the Carpathian Mountains in Ukraine. And I was on stage thanking everybody for the massively successful launch of the product and making jokes. I think this actual photo was me making a joke about how hard it had been to get there. The difference between the two, and I pinpointed, it was a specific meeting where all of my product leads were having huge pushback to the strategy for the product and for the PMF seeking process. And I just took them all into this room. It was like almost like a bedroom in one of our meeting rooms with lots of comfy cushions. And I was trying to create this kind of physical cocoon of comfort and safety. And I just sat down with them and I was like, guys, what are you afraid of? Tell me truthfully. And I will take it and I will shoulder it, and you can move on and be free to create your best work and just unshackle yourselves from the fear. And it was so simple. They just said to me, we're scared that if we are part of this and it doesn't work out, we'll be responsible for failure. And I just went, right, I'll send a memo. I'll send a memo to the whole company, to the 1,000 of us, and I'll just say, this is on me. And you guys are going to do your best work and it's going to be incredible. And whatever happens, if it doesn't work out, it's my fault and I will answer to it. And from that moment, they had their safety and they were able to just really open up and do everything that they wanted to do. And that's what took us to PMF and to Lift. And for my final slide, this is a very honest one. I've never shown it before, so please don't be screenshotting it and tagging me on LinkedIn. These two pictures that you see are 2.5 minutes apart. The one with me in a party hat with a glass of wine is the first picture. 2.5 minutes later, this is a photo that I sent to my leadership group. This is the day that we launched our closed beta, or public beta, sorry, for Clario. The weight of being a product leader is incredibly hard to shoulder. You are responsible for basically the entire direction of a technology company. You're the person who answers ultimately to the success. If it's you who is looked at a board meeting and asked the question of, well, did you build something people would buy? And it's you who drives revenue streams. And there's many, many things to balance. Learning to embrace that responsibility, but be kind to yourself at the same time is one of the most important things I can say about working in product. And this applies through all levels of the role, right from someone who's just starting out to someone who's in my role as a CPO. The kindness that you must show yourself, the compassion that you must show yourself. You will make mistakes. You'll be wrong sometimes. You'll lose your temper. You'll cry right after an all hands for no reason at all. That is okay. Be fearless about it. Love it. Building products is an emotional journey. It's a beautiful journey. It requires almost everything as a person. And that's a gorgeous thing. It's a privilege of the role. And just truthfully, know that you aren't alone. We all go through this in some way or another. Find your people, call them all the time. I still ring up my co-founders from my last business and complain about things that are happening in my new place or things that happen in my day-to-day life. We all experience the weight of this. And the thing that I just wanted to finish on is that if you can find the courage in yourself, if you can find the support from other people, if you can do that work and learn to really embrace that, you get the joy of things like this, which closes out the loop. I got off that plane with the absolute fear, the most fear I've ever had in my life, thinking, what if this is a complete flop? Everyone hates this concept that we've done. Everyone hates the risk. I look like an idiot. My career is going to be over. These are all from 5 days later. This is me at the Vegas sign on the very last night of CES. We just got global media coverage. We had $1 million deals coming at us because of the look and the feel and the joy of what we created. Then I grabbed a Mustang and drove around Red Rock Canyon and had a great time and just felt really free because I faced the terror, faced the fear, in the press coverage and the star ratings. And it's just a point that sometimes things won't work out with PMF, but sometimes they really, really will. And it is 100% worth fighting through those growing pains because the joy is unmatched, and the privilege of being able to create something that can reach people and inspire them and align them and change people's lives in many, many ways is a beautiful, beautiful thing to fight for. So thank you for listening. Apologies. I know I also ran on a little bit. We're all such passionate product people. If you've got questions, ping me on LinkedIn. If you've got specific technical questions about PMF and how to do it, also ping me on LinkedIn. Happy to help. And very much looking forward to listening to the rest of the ladies today.
That's great. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. I know that product market fit is definitely a question that comes up regardless of who our speakers are or what the topic is. So I'm sure that was very well received. So on to the next speaker. Next up, we actually were meant to have Ainsley Casement. Unfortunately, Ainsley isn't able to make it this morning. However, we will be posting up a recording of Ainsley's talk, which you will be able to watch after this recording. So instead, we actually have Kat Martin up next. And so Kat, I said this with zero bias, Kat, of course, but she is a fantastic product manager at Signified, working in both the payments and the customer reporting space. Kat is an advocate for diversity and inclusion in the workplace, for which she is a DEI committee member and also Women at Signified co-chair. We will hear a bit more about Kat's career as she puts us all to shame with just how talented she is. Outside of product, Kat has been I have to get this right, Kat, a professional songwriter, producer, vocalist, and you've even had 2 #1 hits in the trance chart as well. So
yes, you've clearly found my mum's webpage, you said.
I was chatting to her yesterday. So with that, I will hand you over to Kat, and she can talk you through the unconventional path into product management. Thank you, Kat.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. So yes, I'm going to talk about my unconventional journey into product. Steve did a pretty good intro of me, PM on our customer-facing reporting products, DEI committee, and co-chair of Women at Signified. When I was thinking about what to call this talk, I had an alternative title in mind, but it wasn't as catchy, so I didn't go for it. How I collected the transferable skills for a job that I didn't even know existed. And that basically describes my situation with product management. I don't have a technical background. I wasn't a business analyst. I didn't do an MBA. But somehow I have managed over the years to pick up the skills that have allowed me to move into product management. And so I suppose my goal today is to hopefully inspire people that want to get into product but don't think that they're on the right path, that it is possible to get onto the right path and use all the skills you've collected on the way. So I'll go through my background. Yes, probably as unconventional as it gets in terms of product. My first job, and something that I still do as a sideline, is a professional songwriter. So I write for dance music. Skills that I collected are writing, obviously. We're all furious documenters as product managers, so it's obviously good to get that experience. Collaboration, because I'd always be collaborating with music producers on a track, and creativity, but there is a caveat to creativity and something that I've learned. So be creative, but not too creative. So you have to write for your audience, not for yourself. I found that the greatest successes I had with songwriting were tracks where the lyrics were extremely user-friendly. I talked about themes that I knew were popular with the audience. In fact, the first number one that I had was almost done by numbers. I went and analysed what other number ones had, what the theme was, and essentially tried to write something that was exactly like that. So extending that into product then, I think I'm starting to learn that yes, you should be creative, but build the product that your users want and not the product that you think they should have and that your ego wants. So my next job then, and this is the job that I had before I joined Signified in 2019. My next job was again in the music industry, working for a company which was a marketplace selling copyright-free sounds, so sound effects, recordings of vocalists, drums, all sorts of music production stuff for music producers then to use in their own productions, because nobody really goes to a studio these days. It's all done in a home studio, more or less. I've written e-commerce manager here. My role was actually, by the end, it was general manager, but I thought e-commerce manager probably encapsulated the bulk of the job. There were two halves to it. There was one half where I was commissioning products to sell on the marketplace, and they would be our own in-house products. And that I thought I would highlight because it ties in so well into product management, even though at the time I still didn't know what product management was. I wouldn't say we were a tech company at the company I used to work for. But yeah, I released probably one product per week, so I certainly got a lot of experience in creating these products. So what I would do would be analyze the market, see what our competitors were doing as well, even listen to the Billboard charts to see what are the sounds that are popular at the minute. I'd then find the talent that could recreate that sound for me, write requirements for them of what I wanted. When they'd finished making it, I'd have to QA and excuse me, prepare to go to market with it. And then when we got to market, I'd be marketing it very heavily, B2C. So that was the kind of product development side, which has given me a lot of skills for product management. On the e-commerce side then, business acumen, e-commerce knowledge, obviously, and starting to get a sense for experimentation. So I did an awful lot of A/B testing, which newsletter title works best, which product is the best placement on the homepage and drives the most sales. And as a result of that, then I became obsessed with data. What are our sales today? Month over month, year over year, all of that. And what's our conversion rate through the different acquisition methods? What's our return on ad spend? I really did get into the data. And as well as that, then I had to be obsessed with our customer and what's their customer experience like? What's their customer journey? And I suppose it really was the customer type stuff, particularly customer journey and experience, that I loved about this. Obviously, I loved making the products, but I didn't know that product management was a career. So when I was thinking about my next step, I thought, what can I do kind of in e-commerce? And I'd been working from home for 10 years at the time. So it was 2019 by the time I left this company. And I thought, I don't want to work from home anymore. I want to get into an office. You can see where this probably is going, what with COVID. But I knew that in the 8 years I'd been with my last company, Belfast had kind of become a tech hub. So I thought I'd look and see what was out there and become office-based, get the chance to do Secret Santa. And so I found Signified. This also tied in with me finishing my law degree. I did a law degree at the same time as working full-time, and what I got from law was writing again, prioritization, because working full-time, studying part-time, songwriting as a sideline, and then negotiation. And again, feeding into this customer thing, I got experience of pro bono mediation. I did really well at it, and I kind of got this sense that I'm good at speaking with people. I'm good at de-escalating stuff. What can I do that's very customer focused in a job in Belfast? And Signified came up with a customer success job. So I joined Signified in September of 2019, started as a customer success analyst, and quickly moved up to be customer success manager. And obviously, customer success managers do an awful lot, but the key experiences that I think started to really set me up for moving into product were taking part in a hackathon. I came up with an idea for process improvement for an internal team, but something that would also have a benefit to the customer experience. And I got to work then with a team of developers during our hackathon on executing this little idea. Again, I was new to the company. I was new to the tech world. I didn't know it at the time, but I was the product manager of that little project. Then I started working with product more regularly. I became that really annoying CSM that always submitted product ideas and found bugs. I was a guinea pig and user tester during design sprint. I took part in any bug bash that I could. And like everybody else has been saying throughout today's talk, I self-funded my own learning and development, and I did a course in Agile. This is kind of late, I'd say 2020, when I started to do that, because I realized all these things that I like about customer success are the interactions that I have with products. So I thought, if I want to make a case for moving into product, I know how competitive it is. I'll do a course in Agile, so at least I understand the software development lifecycle. So I did that, but the skills then that I was able to present as part of my almost business case of moving over to product were that I had shown that I was really good at data analysis. I spent a long time in Looker, and I still do. I was customer centric and always advocating for the customer within Signified. I'd gotten experience of managing stakeholders, both on the customer side and then internally at Signified. I'd worked cross-functionally because you have to as a CSM. And some people might argue, having seen today's presentation, but I learned how to present and how to demo stuff. And really my realization in customer success was I loved solving customer problems, but when I was working as a CSM, it was on a very individual basis. I could solve one customer problem. If I wanted to make any kind of improvements at scale, all roads then led to product. And so I decided that's where I wanted to be. Thankfully, my boss was really supportive of helping me move, and I did then make that move sort of this time last year. And at this point, I've gone full circle. So my previous role, e-commerce manager, the key persona then that I work with in my current role, looking after all of our reporting products, it's the same. It's an e-commerce manager. So I've found that so useful. Being able to think like the customer is slightly easier for me, given that I was the customer at one point. And so just as I'm coming to a close here, if I could give advice to somebody who's trying to move in to product, it's take opportunities, and those opportunities give you the chance to collect skills which can transfer into product management. Get involved in bug bashes, try and work on your data analysis. I'm confident that whichever path you're on, if you make some clever choices and are always committing to your own learning and development, that you'll be able to make a move into product. So with that, thank you, and that's me finished.
Thank you very much, Kat. I can definitely obviously back it up that I think having working with you obviously on a daily basis, I can see that the skills that you have acquired over the over your journey in the product has definitely made for a very well-rounded, not just a sort of a narrow focus or technical product manager, and definitely one of the most I would say most sort of empathetic product managers that I've had to work with. So no, I can definitely vouch for that unconventional route. So thank you.
Thank you.
So next up we have Rachel Gawley, actually. So Rachel, your job, and correct me if I'm wrong, involves bringing together and leading expert teams to research and develop new technical products, and also build those sort of business ventures out from inception to essentially making money. Your background, I guess, lies in software engineering and sort of emerging technologies. I believe it was in medtech and sort of mobiles where you started off, and sort of moving into more of the sort of AI products as well. But today, Rachel will talk about building physical products within the digital world, and I will hand over to yourself now, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that sounds about right. A quick intro, just check my slides work. There we go. Yeah, so my background, I'm a researcher, founder, software engineer by trade. My specialist area really is just getting a new product out the door into customer hands, and I'm often starting with a complete blank page. I have over 15 years experience developing and shaping new products and ventures. Interestingly, since we're chatting about roles and products, I've never once really had a product title. It always end up being more the CTO or CIO or something in that vein. So I probably wouldn't actually be able to get a product job because I've never had that title. But I very, very much am a product person. So software engineer background, medtech. Yep, that sounds right, Stephen, what you're saying there. So when I moved towards the more physical and developing physical products, the question I get from the industrial designers, mechanical engineers is, how did you end up here? And I kind of realized that actually looking back, I've always been here. I'm old enough to have started developing mobile apps before there were smartphones. Imagine the old Symbian phones. So every sort of arc of software or apps or things that I've been working on have largely been on cutting edge tech, so cutting edge hardware. So the really interesting thing is I'd be working with big names and getting R&D devices, some devices that we'd have to send back or would never actually make it into production commercially. So some of those devices there that you see never actually made it out into the wild. And that's really difficult if you're making a software product and you're relying on someone else to create some hardware that sort of, makes this thing and a valuable product to the end user. You're beholden to someone else's timeline. So it seemed like the best thing for my job would to go towards that and embrace the physical and the digital. And that's really what I'm going to talk about today, sort of how that works and sort of the similarities, but also the differences. So I'm going to talk about physical product using the concept of the innovation stack. And I think a few other people have mentioned it already, we know as product people, we love our Post-its. So that's sort of where it begins. But Innovation Stack is a book. If you've not read it, I highly recommend you do. I have sort of taken that and blended it for what I've been doing over the last few years. So Innovation Stack is everything that makes your customer valuable or product valuable to the customer. So that's the core features, USPs, the service, the experience, ethics, aftercare and beyond. So it's not really just if you're doing an app about the app, it's about the experience of getting it, it's the experience of using it, it's everything else that goes on. And how these, when they interconnect, will provide a really sustainable and hard to copy value. So if it's sustainable and hard to copy and the customer wants it, ideally you're going to have a product that's hard to beat. So that's why I kind of like the innovation stack. It kind of takes in everything beyond what maybe sometimes as product people you get focused on. And I suppose for me, leading sort of the overall spin out of a venture and the business case and everything else and investments into things, that this gives me the overall view. So I think it's really, really nice to keep us focused. So I'm not going to talk today. We talk a load about discovery, exploration, research, and these kind of product tanks. We're going to assume that we have done all that. And the fact is that this innovation stack is iterated on by getting all this research from customers. Is this worthy? My job in ventures is largely to kill products. I know Scarlett and I were chatting about the joy of getting a product launched. I actually get some joy of killing the 9 that shouldn't exist before I get to the 1. So we go through a lot of research, and we've realized that this is, the ultimate innovation stack. If we're going to create this stack and we're able to deliver on it, we can actually get customers, have a big venture out of that. So I want to take you through an example of this. As a lot of people know that I talk about fake products, so I'm often under NDAs or can't talk about specific client work. And if anyone's seen me talk before, they've often probably seen me pitch Tinder for dogs. So we're not doing Tinder for dogs today, we're doing a techno dog lead. And I sort of want to talk through the physical and what we would do to sort of realize the innovation stack for a techno dog lead. So innovation stacks, if you were to look and read the book and all around that, are largely just a big list. It's kind of like a feature list maybe of all the things that makes your product unique and sort of valuable to the customer. I tend to actually categorize them. You don't have to, but this is sort of what I've worked out, the categorizations I like if I'm doing a sort of tech-enabled physical products. We've got physical, we've got electrical, we've got software, experience, and beyond. So if we do a techno dog lead, so what is it, a techno dog lead? Well, it's a dog lead. The physical properties is it's made of recycled materials. It has to have a quick release function, easy to fit, accessible grip, for the user. It's got sensors and a walking light. So this is what makes up in the physical world. So effectively, it's a dog lead with a light and some sensors. So that's what it physically is. Electrically, those sensors are location sensors, gyroscopes. The lead light, it has to be battery operated, USB-C charging, 1 month charge connectivity. By the way, full disclaimer, this is totally made up for this, so don't be following this. But we would be getting these lists of things from all our user research, discovery, exploration, and validating and sort of iterating as we go. So there we go. We've got the physical, we've got the electrical. We know there needs to be a software side. It's mobile first. We're not saying that it needs to be an app or anything like that. We're just saying it has to be mobile first. It has to be easy to connect. We want some walk data. We want some mood tracking. We're going to track our dog's mood. All of the users said they need to track their dog's mood. They want to analyze the gait so they can send it to the vet. And then they want some trend analysis. So again, we're starting to build up a picture of what this actually looks like. It's going to be sold online, and we've decided that they need a one-click, checkout. It's not, too many options. When the person gets it at home, we care about the unboxing joy. That the idea that when you get it, it's an amazing experience. Like Apple, we know that, because accessibility is big for us, that needs to have accessible package, no hidden costs. So you get the picture that this kind of experience beyond the actual physical thing, beyond the software, beyond the electrical is really important to us. And also important to us is the other things that we maybe don't consider. We're an ethical company. We're going to produce ethical data policy. It's going to be built locally with local resources so we can hit net zero. So this here is our innovation stack that we have validated for our techno dog lead. Again, just to run you through an example of what this might look like. And these combined are what makes us valuable to the customer. It makes us hard to copy, and it also makes us ideally hard to beat. And that's kind of why I love this sort of blend of everything. So that's a lot of the moving parts. So if it's my job to sort of orchestrate all that, that's a lot going on. So who do I get involved? And the thing is that, you're probably used to the software world. You see a lot of you've got your designers, front end, back end, QA. We even have to do the e-com, so we have to write the shop to sell it, and then all around the experience. So this is probably, if you're coming from a software background, people that you'd realize that, you already have. For me, the beyond that we see before, the ethical, the sort of net zero, is where me as a board and sort of chatting to other board members that we have to have that sort of buy-in. So we need the board to buy into sort of the bigger picture here as well, if we are going to do these really, really nice sort of overarching kind of themes to the company. And that's also where the ventures and the research team would lead on that. What are the big trends in the industry right now that we need to follow? So this is like typical. You would sort of see that kind of stack, and kind of people that you get involved if you're just doing pure digital, pure software. Then we have this sort of physical and electrical. So this is why I'm now known as a software engineer. I'm not just an engineer, just to differentiate between the physical world. I end up now having teams that are like industrial designers. That's the look and feel. Mechanical engineer, where do the bits go? How do we design for manufacture? How do we design for automation and manufacture? What materials do we use? What can we source? Supply chain. And then the electrical, we've got electrical engineers, PCB designers, firmware, mechatronics, manufacturing. So you can see this gets complicated very, very quickly, and there's a lot of experts. And actually, I've got a talk coming up, a quite deep dive on how to wrangle all these experts and sort of get people to feed in and collaborate well. So the one thing I would like to say is, while we have all these people, it's the sort of the product research and ventures people and sort of reporting into me that sort of need to sort of orchestrate and make sure there's appropriate collaboration, directional sort of movement between all these experts. So that is definitely some wrangling. So my job is to bring it all together and deliver this stack. And my theory is all roads lead to Rome. So there's definitely more than one way to achieve this stack. And that is the added complexity of my job, especially now adding in physical to the mix. Because often a stack element can be solved by the physical, electrical, software, or a combination of them all. So we have to quickly figure out what that is. So how does this actually work in reality? Well, we experiment, we collaborate, we prototype, and we test. So, it's the kind of standard practice that you would again have in sort of the software world. So I kind of want to just take through an example of what that might do. So if we were to take the concept of lights on a lead, lights on a dog lead, how would we do that? So that comes through my venture studio, kind of looking to do that. Well, the first thing I would do is just shove some LED lights on a lead, and then knowing me, I'll probably look around the house. I don't have a dog, and end up taking my Christmas tree lights and probably trying to lead the cat round it. She's fine. She said no anyway. But that's where we would start. We'd use off the shelf. We would go, well, Maplin doesn't exist anymore, but something like, that kind of electronic store, it would start to MacGyver up something just to give us an idea what would this physically look like. And then we'd start to make it a wee bit more, real. So we'd make something, but we'd realize that, this light in the dog lead, it's meant to give some guidance for walking, isn't really bright enough. So what do? We need to start testing and solving this problem. Shove in some more LEDs. It's looking amazing. It's like a big headlamp now. We can definitely see where we're going. But oh no, the battery isn't powerful enough. So this is kind of in the physical world, the problems that you come up against really quickly and daily and just keep coming at you. So we stick more battery in, but unfortunately the battery is too big for a wee dog, so we can't do that. So what do we do next? So we need to figure out what's the most LEDs or lights that we can put on this lead with the battery that's going to hit the small dogs and the big dogs, and sort of figure out what our bounding box is. But that's still not bright enough. So if we can't do this, we don't have a product. So I need to figure out how to solve this in another way. So this is where maybe the physical guys come into the rescue. We get our materials specialist, and he tells us to use reflective material. It's much better, but it doesn't look good. Apparently, I'm well known with the industrial designers of having the minging scale. So if you hear the word minging, it means that's a no, and we need to look for another material or a design or look. So doesn't look good. Maybe we try, these other 5 materials. The material folks are really good, and it's kind of interesting to see what's out there. And what do? We find the material. Fantastic. So we've got these LEDs that we can reflect with the material, got this effectively headlamp on a dog lead. We're done. Then I realized it costs how much? And the idea is that maybe this is actually too expensive to do. What do we do next? So pretty much my job is this on repeat, and we continue this for each stack. So we could take this again and say, actually, we could solve this in the firmware. Maybe the pattern that the lights comes on is energy saving. Maybe we solve it in the software by giving the user an option to say, actually, I want a brighter light and I will take the battery hit and stuff like that. And we just keep iterating, we keep doing research to figure out what's the best combination here. And that's sort of what I do as a job in the physical world. And obviously this is the kind of really super condensed, trivialized, fake example of what we do, but it gives you a flavor of the fact that physical can actually, the thing I love about it's tangible. You can get results really, really quickly. So the other thing I want to say is we continue until we deliver the stack or prove it cannot be done. If I prove that the bill of materials is going to be so high in developing this that I have to sell it for £1,000 and nobody wants to bat for that, we need to kill it off. So in the ventures world, in starting from a blank page to getting the most money out of a venture and sort of the commercial value, is we have to kill a lot of good ideas as well because they just aren't commercially viable. So I think I kind of like to put that in there. It's quite easy, I think, sometimes in the physical world to be no, the cost is too high, or sometimes you don't realize that the AWS bills that you're going to get in software actually don't make this a viable business as well. So that's my kind of whistle stop tour summary of physical product development. Innovation stack is awesome. I just like it as a concept. I like it as a concept even for software engineering, just software. The kind of goal is to quickly identify the best combo of physical, electrical, software solutions that will deliver the stack items individually and also collectively. You do this by experimenting, collaborating, prototyping, testing, and getting as much user feedback as you can. And this is applicable to the software world as well. So that's my kind of very much whistle stop tour, kind of slightly overrun. So I think that is me done. Everybody knows I love to chat. So feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or even LinkedIn or anything. I'm happy to chat a bit more about the innovation stack.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you. You always make me feel extremely dumb every time I talk to you. So thank you for that. So with that, I shall move on to our last two speakers. So last but not least, we have Rachel Shear and Clea Allen. This is not their slides, so I will get those up now. So Rachel and Clea are both senior product designers at Liberty IT. They both have a background in web design. I believe you've both graduated from IMD, and you're part of Liberty's product mindset transformation. You started there as interns, then worked your way up to seniors as well. Your talk, I believe, has a strong focus on brand voice. It's called Why Your App Shouldn't Sound Like an App. So with that, I shall hand it over to the both of you, okay?
Hello. So first of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much for having us. So as Stephen said, we called our talk Your App Shouldn't Sound Like an App. So Rachel and I have both been product designers for Liberty IT for about 3 years now since we graduated. And we mainly work on sort of digital insurance products. So while we work on sort of different products in completely different teams, completely different areas within Liberty IT, dealing with sort of language under a brand is such a big part of our roles, and we thought we'd share some of our thoughts and learnings about sort of this area and why we think it's like a really sort of interesting area within product especially.
Yep, so just for a little bit of context on what we're going to talk about, you might have noticed that online applications have taken a little bit of a new direction when it comes to their methods of communication. In recent years, they typically try to be more personable approach when speaking to their users, and this can be through all different types of communication. It might be the language that the application has in itself, their marketing material, and even down to their branding. So today we're going to be focusing a little bit about what exactly is this that applications are doing, what benefits does it provide, and then what type of impact can it have on your users overall. So what exactly is this? Well, there's a lot of different factors to consider when it comes to how an application would like to present itself to its users. But for today, we're going to be focusing on two different things, and these things typically work together hand in hand. But we're going to be talking a little bit about brand voice and then later on a bit about UX writing. So what do I mean when I say brand voice? Well, your brand voice is all about the tone that your application has. By now, most online sites typically fall into a category of tone. And here's just a couple of different examples that you may have already come across in a real life application that's out there today. So we have humorous, formal, enthusiastic, respectful, and casual. And like I said, there's a lot more out there that I maybe just haven't listed here. But overall, taking a more personable approach with tone can make your users aware that there's an actual team of people behind your application, and this just makes it a little bit more relatable for them in general. So what can influence your brand voice? Well, when it comes to creating or finding your brand voice, there's a couple of different things that you would need to take into consideration that can influence your direction. Your product goals. At the end of the day, what is your product for, and what is it really trying to accomplish? For example, if you have an app that's used to book a hospital appointment, it could have a little bit more of a serious tone or a little bit more of an empathetic tone. While if you have an application like, for example, TikTok, it's probably a lot more enthusiastic. You also need to consider who is your user. Will your user kind of appreciate a little bit more of a humorous tone, or could they find it a little bit inappropriate depending on the scenario they're using at the time? And finally, what audience are you trying to reach, and what impact are you and your brand or your application is trying to have in the market at the time? So The right tone can make a really big impact. It's all down to a first impression. Your tone will be one of the first things that your user will notice when they first open your application, and it can influence the decision on any direction that they need to take afterwards, whether or not they actually decide to use it. So using the right tone can build a lot of customer trust and loyalty, and users are going to relate more to a human tone rather than a computer tone, for example. And this can also provide a lot of reassurance, for example, when it comes to like error messaging on a screen. Instead of yelling at your users, letting them know that something has went wrong, just provide a little bit more reassurance and then provide them any next steps and how they can fix it. And then finally, it can really have an impact to make your application stand out from the rest. But here are just some examples of things and brands that are using brand voice today. And you may have already came across these or something similar. But for example, we have MailChimp, and they take a really clear and friendly approach. And one of their main goals is to provide clarity with a little bit of dry humor, even for this language that you see here of, we've searched high and low, but couldn't find what you're looking for. Let's find a better place for you to go. So they've related to the issue, but they're also going to provide you a jump off point on where to go next. Spotify saying, we don't want to lose you, take a really empathetic approach, and they always tend to be really sincere with their tone throughout their whole application. And then finally, probably one that everyone has seen by now is Slack. Slack are always very fun and lighthearted with their approach, and they really make you feel like there's a fun team of people working on it in the background. So before moving on to UX writing, I just wanted to share this quote that we found, and it's by Laura Bush, and it says, people relate to people, and if your brand feels like people, they'll relate to you too. So I think that sums it up really well. But I'm going to pass over to Cleo, who's going to talk a little bit about UX writing.
Yep. So as Rachel was saying, UX writing really goes in hand in hand with your brand voice, but its goal is more to do with guiding your user through the interface and helping them really achieve their goals within your sort of digital product. So you might have heard the term UX writing before, or maybe you've heard of copywriting, which is sort of more marketing. So UX writing is slightly different from copywriting, as it's usually sort of more specific to the interface. And this is more like usually the responsibility of the product or UX designer, whereas copywriting maybe is more of like a marketing and sales role. Or in some companies, such as like the big ones like Google, UX writing can be sort of a job role entirely itself, and they even have, you know, teams of UX writers. So while a large part of UX writing is about microcopy, which is like your button text and your labels and your titles throughout your product, it's also about sort of the narrative that you're creating, and it's a big part of your user and task flows too. So it's also about how you might like sort of explain new concepts to your users, trying to anticipate their needs. And I'll talk about some examples of this next. But the main rules around like sort of UX writing is just trying to be sort of as clear and concise as possible, and try and use language that your users are going to understand. And obviously the way that you would use language is going to be largely influenced by your brand voice. And like brand voice, in order to sort of be effective in this area, it's just about getting to know your users, which is a common theme, I suppose, with everywhere in product as well. So moving on, so obviously UX writing can have a very positive or detrimental effect on your user experience. And these are a couple of examples of maybe what not to do. So in this first example, the user is sort of asked to select dismiss to start the update, which is, you know, the two options that are presented to the user. First is like confusing, and in this case, it's gonna more than likely cause them to take an action that they didn't want to take at all. And another good example is of where sort of language and UX writing is really important is, as Rachel mentioned, in error messages. This is where your user is obviously going to encounter like the most sort of blockers to their goals and the most frustration. So here we have sort of the worst type of error message, which is full of technical jargon. It's not really going to mean anything to most of your users. But the general rule with error messages is just to keep things straightforward and try and provide your user with a solution. So really what they want to know is what happened, what impact can that have on what I'm trying to do, and what can I do about it? So other than error messages, where else might UX writing be important? And just moving on, yeah. So in these slightly better examples, Lemonade uses UX writing sort of provide hints and help text. So in this context, they're letting the user know, okay, you've selected this option, but there's extra steps. There's going to be extra steps later on in the application process related to that answer. And this offers some, clarity and reassurance as someone's going through their application. And Airbnb as well, they use empty states as an opportunity to sort of sell the action that they want their users to perform. So there's no trips booked, but they've got their call to action there to make that sort of enticing. And if you're looking to increase engagement, maybe investing a little more time at looking at your product's microcopy and language might be a good idea. So a good example of this is there was a study with Google's hotel search, and they had switched the label for their search from, it said book a room, to check availability. And they found that users had sort of found the book a room maybe a little bit too committal, and inviting them just to check availability, which was just a change of 2 words, had increased their user engagement by 17%, which, as you know, for a company like Google is a huge amount of traffic, really. So just to sum up, we've got a quote from Slack here. So they say, clear, concise, and human, you can't go wrong.
Yep. So just before we wrap up here, we've shared just a couple of things that you might want to take in consideration if you're looking to take a little bit of a deeper dive into brand voice and UX writing. So have a think about what best represents your application. What impression are you trying to leave on your users, and what generation or demographic are you trying to reach? Remember to talk to your users, find the right voice for them, and also just what you think would represent your product best. And then finally, have a think about investing more time to evaluate the value that doing something like this could bring to your application. And then overall, just do best what you think works well for the product itself and also your team in the background. And then hopefully everything should run smoothly. But that's us. Thank you for listening, and hopefully there were some good takeaways there.
That's great. Thank you very much, both Richard and Claire. That was great. So we'll just wrap up now. I guess I know we're sort of getting very, very close to time, but I just want to really thank all of the speakers. Really enjoyed the actual variety of speakers as well. So it's something in ProductTank going forward this year, we will definitely do that more, to have a little bit more variety rather than a single focus within each of our events. But yeah, so with that, just a massive thank you. I do want just to say as well that for anyone that joined late or had to drop, we will be sharing the recording of this along with Ainsley's talk as well once we wrap up here. So that'll go out later on today. And so once again, thank you, and hopefully see you at the next event as well. Thanks.